I am Sally Ward. I am co-chair of the Baltimore Women's Giving Circle for this year and next. And I just want to say welcome. We are so glad that we have our grantee partners with us today as we all grow and learn together. And we are looking forward to what you all have as takeaways to share. I'm going to turn it back over to the Grantee Connect co-chairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. We are indeed delighted to spend the next hour and a half together, learning and exchanging ideas about feasible solutions to address the very special situation we are in. We will now hear from Maggie and Peter, who will share their insights and build on each other's ideas, and have then about 10 minutes for questions and comments. So to let you know how the agenda will continue, we'll then break out into discussion groups created following grantees' advice. This is important. We gather a group of grantees as we begin to plan the forum to make sure that the topic matches what your concerns are, and logistics as well. So we've created the breakout groups along similar organizational size and budget parameters to the extent possible, of course. Each group has a facilitator, also one of our grantee partners, who are equipped with some discussion prompts and their own, obviously, as well as a circle member who will be there to learn from you and to help out as needed. We'll need a note taker to report a highlight when we reconvene 30 minutes later. A couple of groups have already have a volunteer note taker, and for that we're very grateful. To wrap up the program then with those highlights per group with some key ideas and next steps.
And I'm pleased to introduce Maggie and Peter. I'm Judy Dobbs, co-chair with Sylvia. And I'm pleased to introduce our speakers, Maggie Osborn and Peter Lane. Both have extensive bios, but I'll give you some brief highlights so we'll have plenty of time to hear directly from them. Maggie Osborn is the former CEO of Maryland Philanthropy Network and has more than 30 years experience in philanthropy and leadership. Among other positions she has held, Maggie served as Chief Strategy Officer and Senior Vice President of United Philanthropy Forum, and her consulting firm has provided training and capacity building support to the social purpose sector, acting as a liaison between grassroots organizations and grant makers. The Baltimore Women's Giving Circle is proud to have Maggie as a member, where she serves on the Circle's Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. And now I'm happy to introduce Peter Lane. Peter is a Maryland Nonprofits Associate Consultant, a Mayo Clinic Certified Health and Wellness Coach, and an organizational development consultant with more than 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. He works with individuals and teams that are committed to ongoing learning, reflection, and making positive change for themselves and their organizations. Peter specializes in organizational change and leadership and team development. He is a wellness coach for individuals and facilitates workshops and board and staff discussions about wellness in the workplace. Welcome, Maggie and Peter.
Thank you, Judy, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. This is a topic near and dear to me. Just a quick story. I've worked in the nonprofit sector all my career, either as a staff person or as a consultant to nonprofit organizations. And at one time, I was the instructor for a leadership program called Leading from Within. And part of that was coaching. And so I was meeting with a lot of nonprofit leaders, and they certainly had issues related to boards and fundraising and staff management. But often what they were talking to me about was things like, I don't have enough time to do the things I like to do, or I'm not spending enough time with my family, or a lot of issues that I kind of discovered fall under the wellness category. And so that led me to become a certified health and wellness coach and to bring that aspect into the work that I do with nonprofit organizations. So I would say just sort of one of the main challenges that I think all leaders of nonprofits face is just showing up as your best, right? And your most resourceful self to meet the challenges that you're facing. And certainly there's so many challenges going on now. And it's just important to be present for others, but also be aware of your own feelings and emotions so that you can really respond in intentional ways. And I think one of the simplest and easiest ways to do that is to breathe. And so this morning, as we get started, I'm going to invite everybody to take 3 good deep breaths with me. But first, I want you to just get yourself aware of the chair you're sitting on, your feet flat on the floor, just where you might be feeling any stress in your body, maybe your shoulders, you give them a little shrug. And just feel that groundedness as you sit here this morning. And, there may be other things you're thinking about or thinking about the day ahead or what happened this morning or getting the kids to school or whatever it might be. So what I want to invite you to do now is just take 3 good deep breaths with me and to let go of whatever is in the way so that you're present with us this morning. So we're going to do 3 deep breaths through the nose and then exhale through the mouth slowly. So here we go. Good. Thank you. That's helpful for me as I get started too. So it's a great way just to slow our bodies down a little bit. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Maggie, and here we go.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you all. So many familiar faces and some faces from long ago that I see. I welcome the opportunity to talk to you all. This has been an extraordinary period of time. I, like you, have been in the field for many years, but the challenges that we faced over the last years were new, extraordinary, and continue. And I first would say that I experienced it from the place of Maryland Philanthropy Network. Well, from the national organization, but then from Maryland Philanthropy Network, and as a new CEO coming into an organization in an extraordinary moment in time. So I recognize that I am not a frontline person. I acknowledge that I cannot even imagine, though I tried very hard to work alongside and have the greatest empathy. I just want you all to know that those of you who, through all of this, were frontline and really in the service provision space, I have so much admiration and respect for you. And I hope that some of the things that we talk about today will be of help, be of use to your organization or to you personally. So this was a time that was extraordinary for all organizations. We found ourselves overwhelmed by adding additional things to what were already a full plate. We found the challenges in dealing with staff. How do we enable staff to have flexibility to do what they needed to do for themselves and for their families when we were still overwhelmed by additional services? We saw that we were forced into a world of flexibility in terms of sick and safe time, in terms of all the things that were happening while still having increased demands. And so one of the things that was really interesting to watch for me was the jump to response from many quarters without the acknowledgement that even though that they were providing perhaps help for services to meet the demands of the pandemic, they were not taking into account what that meant for our regular services and issues and things that we were required to do as not-for-profit organizations during this period of time. And so while there was an increase for support for emergency relief, there was a decrease in support for our ongoing mission-related work and our operational budgets in many ways. And that caused us to step back. I think one of the things that I also saw as a real positive in this moment in time was that there was, in some levels, the beginning of empowerment of employees to say either enough or stop or help, which is not something we often say as people who are mission related, who work to live. We needed to learn how to live to work and to do things that were of the highest calling for us. But in that, we created more moments that required sacrifice from us that really depleted the resources of our internal organizations. It depleted the resources and the stamina of employees to do the work that was required. And so as a not-for-profit leader, one of the things that I sought to do was to figure out how to stop doing the things that we didn't need to do and to really focus in on what was core work, what was mission work, and give permission to let all else go. Give permission to let things stop that needed to stop. And I would say that this is an ongoing lesson for all of us organizationally to really stop and think about the things that we're doing that we maybe don't have to do, we like to do, or we are being asked to do, but are not necessary. And I think that this is going to be important as we move forward to sustain our staffs, to make sure that they have what they need to do the necessary work and not all of the other works, that we give flexibility, not just in the idea of sick and safe time and taking care of families, but flexibility inside our organizations about deadlines, about projects, about flexibility to do things in a way that may not be perfect, but are good and appropriate in this moment in time. So I think that that is one thing that we learned internally, organizationally, that I hope that we will continue to move forward with. There were some so those are some of the positive changes. I think the other piece that for me as a CEO during this time, I really wanted to focus on internal organizational culture. Sort of come back inside and say, there are all these structures and systems that have been put in place over long periods of time and institutionalized that maybe aren't serving us, and maybe aren't serving us both as an organization, but also as a team internally. How do we break those down? How do we bring the team to the table to say what's working and what's not working? So there was, for us, there was a real internal effort to have regular team meetings, which were also a break, a forced break, if you will, to bring people around a table, to feed them, to break bread together, to see how everybody was doing, kind of take pulse on each other, but then also say, how do we want to go forward together as a team? How can we take this moment in time to break down some of these structures and rebuild a culture that serves us as a team as we move forward? So regular meetings, providing, my team, I think, was interesting. Some of the things they appreciated most from me as a leader was transparency, honesty, inclusion, and little notes and things that I gave to them, or emails, or the amount of times I said thank you never was enough, but it meant something every time it was done. And those are the things that, as a leader and somebody internally, when you're trying to build the us versus them culture, that we were in this together. It was all of us. Remaining flexible, I think, with people's schedules, whether, we were forced to do it, and it was probably the best thing that happened to organizations across the country. Being able to say, when you want to work from home because the child is sick, or you want to work from home because you need time to concentrate without disruptions. I know that that is hard. I know that is unrealistic when we're talking about childcare workers, when we're talking about frontline people, but at least trying to figure out also for them, how do they get breaks in their day to do what Peter just did with us? I say before every meeting, everybody ought to take 3 breaths. Every time somebody comes together in a group, make sure you stop and acknowledge and sit still for a minute to reset, to give yourself those times.
Maggie?
I think, yes, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, no, it's just what your comments just reminded me of there was some research done by McKinsey and looking at the great attrition and why people left and the perception of employers versus employees.
Right.
And one of the things that came out of the study is that for employees, it was much more of those relational factors, some of the things you just talked about. I think in the nonprofit sector, things like compensation and will always be kind of there. But in terms of, what employees were looking for, it was many of those kinds of things, feeling valued by their manager, a sense of belonging, those kinds of things, more so than pay or some of those other kinds of more transactional benefits. So, I think that is a key thing. It's just, creating that environment where people feel like they're cared for, they have trusted teammates, all of those kinds of things. So
absolutely. I think that belonging piece, Peter, is really important. And that is, I've spent, a long time in this field, and I know that people are committed to doing good. But they often equate good with being almost sacrificial. I'm mission-based. I'm doing this because I believe in it, and we do. But I always pull out the analogy of sort of the oxygen mask at that point. Mm-hmm. When you're on the plane and they say, put your oxygen mask on yourself first before trying to help someone else on the plane. And I'm almost 60 years old, and it just like the light bulb just went off for me after spending all those years without an oxygen mask on myself. And so this pandemic, I think for all of us, has caused us to recognize that. And I hope for many employers to understand that that is what's important to people. What's important to people most is that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves, but also being acknowledged for it and being cared for because of it. So, the goal is not to be completely spent at the end of the day, right? The goal is that you hold a reserve that then others can help invest in that reserve, give you some energy instead of just taking. You have to reboot. You have to find some place in yourself and in your organization that feels like they are giving you something to replenish so that you go do the things that you love and that you're committed to, but you still have to replenish. It can't just be all giving on one side. So, I think that there's some tools that I think are important organizationally. If nothing else, that idea of also no one is in this alone, and you as an organization can't go at it alone. I don't believe in forced collaboration, which is what I used to call what funders would do when they would put out these RFPs and they would say, if you come to us with 3 organizations together, then we'll fund you. Bad idea. I do believe in organizations sitting there thinking, once you've gotten to your core mission, and this is what we need to do, but these are other pieces that, we don't serve whole human beings in one place, right? We serve whole human beings as part of a community. And so figuring out who your community of colleagues and collaborators are that will enable you to better serve the same constituents in a way. And then go and ask for funding for that, and ask for, I struggle with this, right? Because I think that not-for-profits are put in such a difficult situation with funders, right? And forever we've been doing what funders have asked to do, even when they said, we're going to give you $5,000 to serve 5,000 people, whatever. And we say yes, because we need money to do our work. And I'm going to say this, and I know that there are going to be sighs on this call, and I don't mean it this way, but we just have to be brave to say no, that we need more than that. And this is why. And to have those difficult conversations with trusted funders and ask them to be your spokesperson to other funders. But go together, go strong. I think this is a moment in time of deep change in the field of both of philanthropy, but also in the not-for-profit sector, in understanding better what it takes. And I'm really worried because I think funders became really flexible, which was a good thing. They responded quickly. They responded by collective funding and not individual. They were accepting applications from other folks. They're snapping back, and we can't let them snap back. We have to challenge them when they do that. And you have to go to, partners like Mano and Maryland Philanthropy Network to make that case for the sector, that this is not the way forward, that funders need to align their funding, that they need to fully fund what it costs to do things. And I know that that's hard to do. But if we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to keep getting the same things. And we know through this pandemic that it takes a village of not-for-profits to serve an individual. And so we need to find those partners to do it with. Peter, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just thinking about sort of, nonprofits, the system of philanthropy and nonprofits, right? Like it really needs kind of a systemic change. We always talk about that. And so I guess, I think, how do we do that? But also, like, what are the changes that I can make in my organizations as a leader, and that will change, how my organization influences other organizations and influences philanthropy as well. So, what I start thinking about is just like the intentionality and being grounded in what's best for yourself and best for your organization. And I realize that's often difficult to do in the stresses of everyday life, your personal life, your work life, the clients that you may be serving. We get caught up in all that and how difficult it is to maintain that groundedness, both for ourselves, but within our organizations.
Yeah. I think about CEOs, and I think about their relationship within an organization and their relationship with the board. We're in a funny world now where really the CEO, the executive director, really needs to take the protection of their team as their most important job in many ways. It's also the privilege of their job, but it's also their responsibility to make sure that their team is not overburdened, but to also be the one that is the voice for that team, to talk about the creativity and the talents of the team. But also, there was another survey that went out because we recognized that teams were really stressed out during COVID, and we wanted to be able to make sure that they could get mental health breaks, do whatever. And there were so few foundations across the country when we did the survey that were doing anything like that. So baking that into the 2023 budgets and organizations, it's not a luxury. I mean, most of us, shouldn't be doing that, dreaming in that work while we're trying to sleep, right? Which seems to be the only time during the day when that happens. You've got to be able to carve out that creative part of the brain. And whether that's telling your team to go for a walk, telling your team that, during the summers, I shut the office down on Friday afternoons to give people extra time, whether that was to go with their family or to take a nap or do whatever they needed to do, but to try and figure out ways to give people deeper breaks for thinking, really, yeah, and for breathing.
Yeah, it's making me think of a couple of things. I think sort of the hallmark of the nonprofit community sector is kind of a scarcity mindset. And this really creates a trap, right? Like there's never enough. But also that gets translated to I am not enough. And so, we've been talking about the organizational level a little bit. I'd like to shift it just a little bit to each of you and what you can do within your organizations to influence change. I mean, it's very easy to internalize that message of there is not enough and I am not enough, right? Money, skills, resources, volunteers, whatever it is. And we kind of get into this reinforcing loop. It's kind of how our brains are hardwired of, you know, kind of a negative reinforcing loop. And that gets exhibited out for ourselves or staff in a lot of different ways, you know, in terms of addictive behaviors, eating, alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever it is, you know, that kind of stress can really get in the way of our mental and physical health. And certainly that, impacts our organizations as well. So I'm thinking, you know, what you're talking a lot about is for each of you listening as leaders in your organizations, one of the greatest role you can play, no matter your job title, is modeling the way, is really kind of embodying the behaviors and values that you want to instill within the staff as well as the organization. So, you know, just, you know, for a minute, think about somebody who's played professionally or personal life, played an important role in your life, and the kind of influence that they had on you. So, you know, I think, you know, for each of you listening, how you show up at work and how you're able to kind of break down the negativity that we all get into sometimes is really helpful. And part of that is building your own resiliency, right? Like how you cope well with challenges and adversity using skills that you have consistently over time. And part of that is tricking our brain, because I'm not saying any of this is easy. Like we all, you know, fall into these traps because of the way our brain works, right? It's fight or flight and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So just a couple of maybe practical tricks that all of you can try is, one, the breathing, right? We just did that a little bit. I mean, it's physiological. It actually brings more oxygen into the body, the brain. It slows you down. It allows you to think more clearly. Another one is, you know, some of you are so tied into your computers or phones. It actually helps your brain to think more clearly when you scan the environment. So even like looking around the room, looking out the window, getting up and taking a walk, when you have a panoramic view, it does something to your brain to help you think more clearly and creatively. Another one is like a routine. And building that into your day that brings predictability and behaviors that you feel you can control. Because I know all of us, right, in daily work, we get so caught up in the work or the urgency that it's difficult to kind of step back. So the extent that you can build in some routine, whether it's a 5 or 10-minute walk during lunch, or you get up and walk up and down the hall and stick your head in and say hello to somebody, whatever it is, those kinds of things can be really helpful. And the last one, and there's been a lot of research on this, is positive emotions in the workplace. There's a researcher, Barbara, what is her name? I wrote it down. I think it's Barbara Erickson. And she has done a lot of research about how when we bring those emotions into work, it influences others. So if you think about, you know, think about your own workplace. How much do you feel joy or gratitude or pride in your workplace? And if you don't, what can you do to bring that into the workplace? And again, this falls under that kind of relational factors in the workplace, as opposed to just how much people are paid or what the benefits are. So these are some things that as leaders, you all can do. So I'm curious if everybody maybe just take a minute in the chat space, and I know we're almost out of time, but in the chat space, I would love to see some other positive emotions that you think would be really helpful to the workspace. Let's just put them in there and see what we can come up with.
I'll add two while we're right there. A simple smile. That's a great one. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll just note, earlier I put in the link to that McKinsey report. So if folks are interested in that.
Laughter, 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 laughter.
Appreciation. Yep. Encouragement. Others.
I think a big one is also creativity.
Yep.
Short discussions about Star Trek. That's right. Let's get into the.
Yeah.
Hello to everybody.
So, you know, there's lots of those kinds of things. Just think about how can I stop during the day? How can I bring that into the workplace? I think that can have just a lot of influence. Again, you know, how you show up is going to influence how other staff show up as well.
Can I also say, this is one of my pet peeves, and I hope anybody who thinks about this can do this. For having been in the not-for-profit sector for years and years, we tend to have offices that are full of things that were hand-me-downs from corporations, or they were mixed use or whatever, and a little color, a fun poster on the wall, a little something. I mean, it doesn't cost a lot. It makes all the difference in the world. Paint a wall in your office red. Do something with color or whatever. It is amazing what it does to change the tenor in a space and the way that people feel about being in the space. If it looks better, if it feels happier, it feels creative. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. I was looking at my notes. There is research that shows people do their best when they have at least 3 times as many positive emotions as negative emotions. So just think about that kind of formula in your own workplace, right? And how you can, you know, change that and have a role in that.
Richard, I love the team thing, because everybody has something to contribute. And I think that's something else that I really changed within my organization from the beginning, but in particular because of COVID, is everybody got to bring whatever gifts they wanted to bring to the table in a different way, whether that was they took on the team building, or somebody brought in baked goods from home to share at a team meeting, or someone did learn some frame at a conference, or read something that was interesting. So everybody was contributing, and that tends to bring the energy level so far up within absolutely. A team. So yeah, big one.
So, the last thing I just wanted to say, just to share with people, is this really helped me at one point. I read this book. It's called The Power of Full Engagement. And, you know, a lot of us get wrapped up in, like, there's not enough time. I need to learn time management. And you know what? It's really not about time. It's about energy. And the authors of this book talk about energy, that it's not time, but it's energy that leads to higher performance. And they talk about energy in 4 ways: physical energy, emotional energy, mental energy, and spiritual energy. And we need to draw from all of those. And to be fully present, they say, we need to be physically energized, emotionally connected, mentally focused, and spiritually aligned. And so, again, for you as leaders in your organizations, how do you connect with those things? How do you connect with getting that physical energy? And at certain times, you know, we'll rely on some more than others, but it's a really helpful way to think about energy as opposed to time. So I know we are just about out of time.
Thank you so much. Let's open up for a few minutes of questions. If you would like to raise your Zoom hand, that would be easier. And Jeff just put, you can raise your digital hand, or type your name in the chat so you can be recognized for comments or questions. Kara has a question.
Hi, I'm Kara from Mercy Health Foundation. Thank you for this great talk. I had two thoughts while you were talking. Two things deeply resonated with me, though it was all great. And you were talking about building in moments for creativity. And I just wanted to plug the book, if you haven't read it, Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, the developer of Pixar. He talks about building a workplace culture that allows for humor and autonomy and creative expression and avoiding micromanaging and burnout. And it's really been helpful to me. And my question for you is, you had mentioned how there's this, now that the pandemic is over, says the person working in the hospital, there's this snapback of wanting to go back to the old way and how we have to sort of hold the line. And I know my therapist said, don't set a boundary, state a need. Because when you state a need, people want to work with you. But have you noticed any pitfalls or pushback or an inelasticity and any ways to thank them, but state your needs in a way that could be compelling still and doesn't sound like whining or shirking responsibility? I'd be so grateful for those tips.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you are going back to somebody, you're saying, as we learned during the pandemic and as we see as a team who's really continuing to function and get stronger, I really think the power is in the hands of the team right now, and individual employees. I mean, one of the hardest things that I dealt with during this entire period of time is I can't hire people. People can't hire people. They really want to hang on to their good employees. Right. So the power is in your hands to go back and also say, this is what we need. This is how we learned to do so well through the pandemic. And let's work on continuing this. So it's really about it it's almost a reversal of what has always been, where management used to come and say, join us, do what we want you to do. This is more, join us because this is what we've learned. And this is how you're going to, keep us happy and build strength in the culture of this organization. So, giving people time to be creative. I mean, and I'll give you an example. I'm a patient at Kennedy Krieger Spine Institute. You walk in that building and it's everywhere. I see there's kids' drawings up. People are wearing like really interesting outfits. They get to wear these t-shirts that everybody designed. There's energy there that in a place that is dealing with some incredibly difficult things, right? People are joyful and energetic and creative. They're all doing pumpkin contests. There's energy in that building at all times. And I've been there through the whole pandemic, in and out of that building. And it's, to me, and every single person you encounter, you feel it. So I think it's the people within the building are the energy and are the creativity. And you just need to go back to senior leadership and say, look how good this is. Look how great people are feeling about this. And we need to continue to do this. So I don't think it's a hard sell job. Now, I do recognize institutions are institutions, but I think institutions in this moment know that it benefits them to do some change. They're seeing it around them.
And do you feel that funders are more open to if we say, we've learned actually that this works better during the pandemic. It actually helps the community more if we XYZ, that they'll, or some, I guess, if they draw a hard line, we do what we have to do. But I'm just kind of thinking our job is to hold the line based on what we're discovering is best practice out of necessity. And I just am always a little worried about how much power to take back, because it's a funding relationship.
But I think there's two things that you walk in with that are so powerful, and that is stories, right? The stories of the change you're seeing and the way that these things are working, and the data that backs that up, right? Because data makes stories true, and stories make data real. And it's about the relationships that you have with those donors and the relationships they want to feel they have with the institution and the people they're trying to help. So if you go to them and say, we've learned that this is a better way to help the people you care about, that's pretty compelling to me. And you're still going to hit those funders that are just, this is how we've always done it, this is how we're doing. And you know, I have a saying that I've had for the 30 years that I've been a fundraiser, and that is some money is too expensive, right? If it's gonna, right, if all they're about is reporting and things like that, you will find that if you are true to your mission and you are true to the data and the stories, you will find the money.
Sorry, we have Daveen and Kelsey had questions. We'll, of course, take them both, and we'll try to be as brief as possible so we have some time to discuss in groups. Daveen.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Daveen Liggins-Lee with Vehicles for Change. This has been very great. So one of the things I always go to is, and I'm working on it, is how do we fix it, right? And no one wants to feel like they're being fixed. So, but how do we really go about implementing this? I took like a lot of notes here. So when I think about the culture of the organization, there's so many moving components, so many personalities. What are like one or two things that really brings this home that we can start to really implement to really bring the change at the cultural level?
Well, I'll jump in. Just, I think one of the first things, and I think this is a great skill for any leader, is listening, right? Like good old fashioned active listening. You know, again, in the rush of every day, we hear things, but we're not necessarily listening. Listening to the meaning, listening to the emotion behind it. So, you know, creating that time and space for you to really listen to employees, you know, good old fashioned active listening, open-ended questions, summarizing, you know, just all of that kind of stuff that I think creates connection and lets staff know that they're valued. So, you know, that's sort of the starting point for me, is just really being present and listening in a way that's really deeper than what we might normally do.
Thank you, Peter. Kelsey.
Good morning, all. My name is Kelsey Whaley. I'm with St. Francis Neighborhood Center. So I want to thank you both because this was very insightful and very helpful. With that being said, I'm very big on creating a team unity environment. The teams that I've worked on in the past have been, some of them not so great, and the ones that were great had a really good team building bonding time. How would you say would be the best team building? Because our team is young, but we have so much potential together. And when we collaborate together, we're awesome. So how would you say to continue to build that space where we become a unit, right? We're a well-oiled machine. Like, what are activities or activities we can do that help build the team? And to the point where it's like, okay, team building is not boring, but we're having a good time in coming together at the same time. Thank you.
So I would say in both cases, also with the last question, one of the things that was helpful was to find sort of the body of the really more willing and energetic, right? And give them the power to figure that out, right? That it's not really, I don't think, your job to figure out what all the team building things are. And especially for younger members of the team, they have a very different idea about what that looks like. So sharing the power about building the team is one thing. And everybody sort of takes a turn at it. So you begin to get the personalities of everybody in the team, and just be fun. Fun is work. I mean, having fun together is the work, I guess is what I want to say. And so, yeah, and also building those relationships. So breaking bread together, right, is huge, right? Just breaking bread together and sitting around and having formalized conversations, or just finding out interesting things about each other begins to build that trusting relationship that leads to other team building.
Thank you. Oh, so I'm sorry, Peter, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, I mean, trusting relationships for any team, to me, like trust is the sort of bedrock, the foundation. So there's, you know, there's all kinds of team building activities, and those are helpful. And like I think Maggie just said, the work is the team building. And often that involves, like often we don't have trust until we go through a disagreement together, right, or to work through something that's challenging. And we think, oh, we're not a team because we're not agreeing. If you're not agreeing and you work at it, you're actually building your team. And, you know, none of us likes disagreement or conflict. And so we try to shy away from that. But I would say, you know, as much as you can in a healthy way, lean into the disagreement, because that's going to build your team.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Let's take one last question from Andrea then, please. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, which Veronica just put in the chat, I think one of the most important things is that you're genuine. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've had bosses who you can tell just went to a management training and are like, they ask you this question and you're like, it's not real. It's not authentic. But if you are real and genuine and caring, I think that comes across. I also just put in the chat, I just participated in this thing that was called Rockstar Bingo Music something. What was it called? Rockstar Bingo. And everybody had to submit 3 songs, and then they played and everyone got a bingo card and you had to try to guess what the songs were. And at the end, the playlist went out to everyone with like their 3 favorite songs. It was so fun, and the songs were so eclectic, and it was a good way to unify. Like, it really divided people by age. So it was really fun and interesting, and free.
Yep, free is good.
Thank you, everybody. Please know that we are recording this plenary session and the final one later. We're also saving the chat, and we'll be sending out all the resources and the good ideas that everyone is contributing. Thank you for a fantastic opening. Jeff, if you would like to please organize us into our groups to have a few minutes to spend together, continuing the conversation in smaller groups.
There were so many discussions that we had, but reminding ourselves that both the staff and the population served are unique. Everybody is unique, and they have different talents, and it's important to find out what people are really about and to try to meet them where they are in terms of being able to accomplish something as a team.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go on to group 2, and the facilitator was Torben Green from St. Francis Neighborhood Center. And so would someone from that group report on a highlight?
Yep, so this is Jennifer Stein. I'm with CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates of Baltimore County. I was the note taker, so I get to talk. So we focused a lot on different ways of team building and talking about helping everyone feel like a family, honestly, and feel welcome and seen as humans and people, and just a part of a team on the organization. We had a great, Veronica from Pivot talked about how she feels really lucky that she doesn't really feel a lot of these struggles right now. And one of the things that she's able to do because of how they're structured is she gives extra time off during the year, just for people to kind of relax and not worry about work so much, so that they can focus more on working really hard during their busy times. So we talked about different ways to acknowledge people, honor people, help them feel supported and cohesive together.
Thank you. In group 3, the facilitator was Katie Alston from Marion House, and I believe that Todd Marcus was the note taker. If someone from group 3 will give us some comments from your discussion.
Morning, everyone. This is Todd Marcus. I was our note taker. I did an amazing job. And I would say that we had a good conversation. I think that some of our themes that we found ourselves in conversation about were really just the dynamic of in kind of management end of how to provide that meaningful support engagement to staff members, certainly before pandemic, highlighted even more so after. And so I think some of the interesting things that we talked about were a little bit of ways of going about that in supportive ways, having fun events that won't leave staff feeling stressed out that they have yet another thing to do, but it will be meaningful, it'll be a good stress reliever kind of approach. And just that having that authentic kind of care shown for staff members and finding ways to get people to engage with each other meaningfully. One of our team members is Anthony Butler from over at AIRS, and he shared a really fun acronym that he uses. Anthony, tell me if I got it right. I think it's PIFYDMS, which I think he said is personal, interesting, fun facts you don't mind sharing. That he uses that as a fun kind of team building thing with staff to as a way of drawing people out, encourage them to share. You know, everybody's got some fun passion or hobby or side hustle that, you know, kind of putting it in that fun way without it being an awkward forcing people to share stuff, but just more fun as a way of just creating a festive kind of dynamic, learning more about people, finding things you can draw back on to make them feel interested in. And so those were a few things that were themes from our conversation.
Thank you very much. So group 4 was facilitated by Daveen from Vehicles for Change. And if we could have a highlight from that discussion.
Good morning, everyone. I facilitated and took the notes. I had a wonderful conversation with Christine, Laurie, Carrie, Jasper, Bobby, and Psalm. So it's my pleasure to meet all of them. One of the things that we talked about was just like really having a real conversation about some of the challenges that's going on and how to overcome those challenges. And one of them is the inequity in the workforce, especially as it relates to teleworking and hybrid work. Some can, some can't, especially depending on the nature and the mission of the organization. And within that, it can create some tension between the workers, or some can and some can't, like I said. So one of the things is the challenge is to raise more money to try to attract people who can't work from home anymore, but can you pay them more? Then you get into the vicious cycle of fundraising, and then some funders don't fund, salaries. So there's that challenge, but to overcome that, one of the things we talked about is creating a community team based kind of collaborative work environment, and having time where people come together, and it's not as structured. There's an intention of purpose around it, but it's a time where people get to know each other outside of that person who's always demanding the reports, right? Or telling you, you need to do this better, faster, and with less money. But you find out who they really are as a person, and it's time structured within the workday where you get to really know each other and have fellowship, as Jasper had shared. So that's one of the things we had talked about, is really getting to learn one another.
Thank you very much. And our last group, group 5, Kara from Mercy Health Foundation was the facilitator. And would someone from that group give us a highlight?
Hi, our team had a lot of really great things to share, but if I had to drill it down, this concept bubbled up of creating a whole person work environment. Mm-hmm. And the two ways that most often we're impressed to do that is, one, to respect everybody's different needs for flexible hours, remote work, different working styles, how they prioritize their work, the ways in which they work, allowing people to be different. And the second thing was trusting the team that you've built to do their work in meaningful ways, even if you can't always see it, not to micromanage, but to just allow people to take ownership of what they're doing. And one of the concrete ways we discussed showing that is maybe plotting it out on a calendar, or checking in often with supervision so they feel assured that you're still doing meaningful work, but you're doing it in your own way. And in that way, people are allowed to be 3D human beings in their workplace and feel respected and autonomous so that they're empowered to go the extra mile and don't quiet quit.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for sharing the outcomes of your discussions with us. Now to close out, you know, we've learned a lot in this forum, and Sylvia is going to give you a few more, some information about some other resources we'll be sharing with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And taking advantage that we have just a couple of minutes, extra minutes, if I could impose on Peter and Maggie to give us your own one highlight of today's program, perhaps anything you just heard or something that you would like us to take away or your own. Peter?
I think for me, I'm just observing sort of the openness and curiosity of everybody, and just being open to new ideas and thinking about what you can do to make yourself and your organizations more effective. So I think that's what I'm taking away, is just that, you know, how we can remain open and curious in a way that will open up for new ideas and innovation.
Thank you, Peter. Maggie?
So to me, I also am feeling the, and know from my own experience, the bravery that we discovered in ourselves over this last period of time. To be brave to ask for what we need, to be brave to be vulnerable to one another, and to also, you know, love ourselves a little bit more than we probably were doing in the past. You know, that to be open to creating work environments that are fully human, and that are generous of spirit, but also, you know, really celebrating the people that are committed to taking care of others and to take care of each other as well. And so I'm moved by, as I always am, by the people in the not-for-profit sector as being extraordinary human beings, of great minds and big hearts, and spirits beyond any others. And so a celebration of you all, and thanks for allowing me to be part of the conversation with you all. And I hold you in great esteem and in my heart, and will hopefully in my next chapter keep fighting for you all. So thank you for letting me be with you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for a very dynamic session. We're posting the evaluation form link in the chat. So please fill it out while ideas are fresh in your mind. And then please look for a message from us with a reminder to fill out the evaluation form if you are not doing so already. The notes from each breakout group will ask each note taker to please send us all your notes, and a link to the recording of both plenary sessions, as well as resources and ideas from the chat and others as we find them. You will also get a link or an invitation to join the Grantee Connect Google group, which is an informal way to stay in touch with each other by email. Because, and I'd like to highlight something we heard over and over today, if there's one thing this program has reinforced is the importance of relationships and partnerships. And the Google Group's purpose is precisely that. So again, thank you all for your contributions to this program, and really, as Maggie and others have said, for the work you do every single day. We are really grateful to you. And all our best for Thanksgiving. And we'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.